Jesus Christ. Friends, I have an urgent message today to ask you to pray, to fast for Ukraine, and to contact your representatives in Congress, Senate, to urge President Trump to not go forward with this rumored forced peace deal that he's going to require the Ukrainians to sign off on. If these terms are true, then it is catastrophic for Western civilization, and that's no overstatement. And I want to, in this video, explain why it's so critically important that we, Catholics, Christians, advocate for a just peace and not an unjust peace. You know, Winston Churchill once said that of all the tyrannies in history, the Bolshevik tyranny is the worst. It's the most destructive and the most degrading. And people are naive if they think that simply because the structure of the Soviet Union collapsed, that the spirit of Bolshevism, that degrading, destructive, tyrannical spirit disappeared with it. They're wrong. It is alive and well, and it is eating away not only at the Russian soul, but at the soul of Europe and the soul of the West. And it is taken on a very different form, but that same destructive, degrading animus is at work in this war. And if people say that I'm wrong and that that's not the case, then explain to me what kind of spirit sends a missile repeatedly into residential buildings. This has been happening for 4 years. Missiles after missiles after missiles are sent into residential buildings. Children, innocent people butchered. War is one thing, but for Russia, which claims to be a pro-life Christian nation, to be sending missiles intentionally to terrorize innocent little kids, that is the embodiment of that Bolshevik mentality of tyranny by terror, by destruction, and by degrading. So it's important that this be spoken about and that it lead to action. People may ask, why is it that Ukrainians aren't speaking up more about this? Why is it someone who's non-Ukrainian like me or others who are doing a lot of the public advocacy out of their own time and effort? A lot of it is because Ukrainians are traumatized. Ukrainians are traumatized because they are seeing unfold before them now what unfolded before their grandparents and their parents, and they thought this would never happen again. And when I say parents and grandparents, I'm talking about the Holodomor, the forced starvation of over 4.5 million people. The West just looked on. We're talking about the forced deportations to Siberia, the re-education, the torture, the destruction of an entire people's culture, language, and religion. And this is happening all over again. Now they've changed the flag. It's not the Soviet flag, it's the Russian flag. But even then that can be critiqued because so often we see these Russian soldiers carrying the Soviet flag. They still have statues of Lenin. They still have busts of Stalin. So if the U.S. goes ahead with this forced peace agreement that they're going to force Ukraine to go through, if this is true, then this is catastrophic for America and for the West and for civilization for these reasons. First of all, they're going to force Ukraine to cede its own territory. Sorry, let me first give up what they're asking of Ukraine. I apologize. They're going to apparently require that Ukraine give over more territory, not just the territory that Russia has already stolen, but more territory. They're going to require that Ukraine give up large amounts of its weaponry, especially its large weapons that it's acquired in the past 4 years. They're going to require that Ukraine cut its military in half. If all of this is true, then this is catastrophic, and these are the reasons why. Number one, there has been a gross violation of a nation's sovereignty, of a people's sovereignty. And if we force Ukraine to go into this, we're establishing a precedent of award for aggression. Accepting forced territorial cession under outside pressure legitimizes conquest by force. And it tells other powers like China and others that if they push hard enough and they spill enough blood, that borders can be changed and the victim will be blamed for not compromising. This is unacceptable. And if we're going to do this and put our name to it, then this is the end of the American dream. This is the end of it, because we stand for freedom. We stand for integrity. We stand for the little guy. We stand for religious freedom. We stand for all of these things. But when push comes to shove and the big bear comes out and attacks the helpless neighbor, it's not Ukraine on Russian soil. It's Russia on Ukrainian soil, killing Ukrainians, openly advocating for genocide. There is no Ukrainian Catholic or Ukrainian Orthodox Church anywhere in the territories controlled by Russia. Why is that? It is not just a military conflict. This is a cleansing. It's a form of genocide. And if we're going to victim blame here, and we're going to give to the aggressor all that they want and more, then we have just been party to legitimizing conquest. The second point here, it's a long-term security disaster. If you cut Ukraine's military in half and they are required to surrender their key weapons, this will not bring real peace. Who trusts Russia that by Ukraine giving up the little means it has to defend its women and children, that in 5 years, Russia's going to honor this? Put your name in the comments section if you think that's the case. No, of course not. This is a classic Russian tactic of using negotiations as a weapon of war, not as an end to war. This would make Ukraine, the giving up its weapons, having its military, this would make Ukraine permanently vulnerable to future attacks. And the next time we get a Joe Biden in office, Russia's going to come right back in. This is a classic case of buying time. In this case, an aggressor such as Russia could rearm, just wait a few years until more favorable conditions, then dictate even harsher terms to a weaker, demilitarized neighbor. Like, you do this or we're going to come in and we're going to be worse than what we were in 2022. This is also the third point here, is this is the collapse of international law, whatever remains of it, and deterrence. So since the Second World War, that corrupt organization known as the UN, nevertheless, it has, and other organizations have, made recourse to international law in the face of the far more bigger problem of war. So at least they could point to international law to guide them, despite the fact that organizations like the UN are not ideal. But at least there's international law, and at least there are mechanisms in place for deterrence so that people can live in peace. Now, if a state like Ukraine is compelled to accept such absurd terms after trying to defend itself justly, then the United Nations Charter principle of territorial integrity becomes meaningless. And if strong powers which use their strength for good, I'm thinking of the United States, if they aren't going to back these long established policies and terms of territorial integrity and international law, if the United States isn't going to stick to it, and if other international partners are not going to stick to it, then other states in the Baltics, in the Balkans, in Asia, they are going to lose faith in security guarantees and in the American word, and they're going to seek nuclear weapons. Why? Because they know that they're going to become the next Ukraine, that they're going to be squashed by their bigger neighbors, and their bigger neighbors are going to be rewarded for their aggression. So they're going to get nukes. So this concession to Russia, it is going to multiply nuclear weapons in our world, and it's going to lead to preemptive wars. Smaller countries are going to be very nervous. There's another thing here. It's called domestic legitimacy and social stability. If Ukraine gives in to this, then after hundreds of thousands of their best and brightest being butchered and killed and wounded, after millions being displaced, after years of resistance. A leadership that would sign away its territory and cripple its own army and give away its weapons would lose all legitimacy. And what that's going to invite is internal turmoil, radicalization on a level we cannot fathom, and state collapse. And this is very dangerous. We have a whole section of Europe which is militarized, and if we force them to do this unjust peace, then we're going to have tens of millions of people who are radicalized, bitter, living in a collapsed society. And you're going to have a bigger problem on your hands. There's another point is going to be a humanitarian catastrophe. People, listen to me. Ukrainians know what they're talking about. They've lived under the Russian boot. And keyboard warriors here in the United States or in Canada who have been, digesting Russia propaganda on your conservative websites or even liberal websites take in all this garbage, and you think that you know more about this stuff, you're wrong. You're so wrong. There is going to be a humanitarian disaster. People are going to flee. They know this monster. They've lived under the Russian monster, and they're going to flee. You think that the rush at the border of Poland in 2022 was bad? Multiply that by 5. I was there when it happened. I saw the sea of humanity pressing up, trying to get out. It's going to be worse, because if the West gives in to Russia's demands here, then any sane, able-bodied person is going to run, and I don't blame them. Ceding territory to the monster, it formalizes the abandonment of millions of people who are living under occupation right now. There are all of these people who are living under the Russian boot in Donetsk, in Zaporizhia, in southern Ukraine, who are waiting to go back to live in freedom. And if we just abandon them, then they're done. They're never getting out. Now, there are people in those territories who want to be under the Russian boot, fine and well. But those people who are living there, who've lived there for generations, that's Ukrainian land, they should not be abandoned. No, just because of one madman who is lusting for more power and lusting for more land. There's no need for Russia to have more land. It already has the greatest landmass on planet Earth, and it's turned that into a mud pile. So these people who are left on the territory of Ukraine, and it's given over to Russia, if that's the case, they're going to be subjected to reprisals. They're going to be subjected to repression. I've spoken to Russian speakers from Melitopol, in the Zaporizhia area, in Kherson. They all don't know each other, but they tell me this exact same thing. What they had to go through to get out of there, and what their friends and family are living through. And those who are currently not under Russian occupation, but will be under this forced peace, if it comes to pass, God forbid. But if it comes to pass, then these people who are living in their own homes right now in Ukraine, and once that document is signed, all of a sudden their territory now falls under the merciful hands of Mother Russia, they are going to be subjected to cultural erasure, language erasure, religious erasure, filtration camps, deportation, political persecution. What this says in effect is that their rights, their suffering are negotiable. And righteousness, justice, and truth are not important here. This is morally indefensible. And any state claiming to stand by this is an enemy of God, is an enemy of humanity, is an enemy of goodness. If we want more war, then we have to go along with this forced peace that they're pushing down the Ukrainians' mouths. Because what it does is it gives to Russia the area that it cannot overcome by military force. And I'm speaking about these embankments and fortresses and defensive barricades that the Ukrainians have built up since 2014. It's been over a decade that Ukraine has been at war with Russia. And since 2014, Ukraine has built up a system of defensive blockades and trenches that in all likelihood Russia will never be able to overcome, because it just takes a few defenders to bed down there and hold back all kinds of Russian advances. I'm not talking about these current areas where Russia's advancing. I'm talking about further back from the front. There are defensive positions there that Ukrainians have had for over 10 years. And Russia cannot remove them by force, by military means. So they're seeking to remove them by diplomatic means. And they're hoodwinking people who don't know here in the West. So once that is removed from Russia's threat, those defensive positions, then there's nothing holding Russia back from getting to Kyiv, and from Kyiv to Lviv, and from Lviv into Poland. What we are inviting is war on an unimaginable scale. And Russia needs to do this because it faces its own demographic catastrophe. It is death or victory for Russia. There's no other way. It's a demographic winter for Russia, and I've been saying this for years. And so their only option in their mind is to destroy their neighbor, to expand to the high water mark of Russian influence, and to leverage that for further conquest. If we give in to this, we have just invited every other malevolent force in the world to do the same, to replicate it, whether it's China or any other country. Ukraine's been fighting on its own for 4 years, basically. It's been fighting without benefit of foreign troops coming in and helping. And Russia, on the other hand, has a larger number of soldiers, and it has North Korean soldiers. It has Chinese and Indian money for the past few years before Trump put some pressure on India. Chinese and Indian money financing this. It has Iranian drones. All of this against one smaller country. And Europe and the US are standing by, and they're talking brave, but they're not stepping up. It's time. It's time that we pray hard, that we call our senators, our congressmen, and I think it's time that we start sending in help to these long-suffering Ukrainians. Lord have mercy.